The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to the crowds, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man throws seed on the land. Night and day, while he sleeps, when he is awake, the seed is sprouting and growing. How, he does not know. Of its own accord, the land produces first the shoot, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. And when the crop is ready, he loses no time. He starts to reap because the harvest has come." He also said, "What can we say the kingdom of God is like? What parable can we find for it? It is like a mustard seed, which at the time of its sowing in the soil is the smallest of all the seeds on earth. Yet once it is sown, it grows into the biggest shrub of them all and puts out big branches so that the birds of the air can shelter in its shade." Using many parables like these, he spoke the word to them so far as they were capable of understanding it. He would not speak to them except in parables, but he explained everything to his disciples when they were alone. The Gospel of the Lord. Our first reading this morning from the prophet Ezekiel speaks of a prophecy about a cedar being planted at the highest point in Israel. Now, the extraordinary nature of this prophecy is probably helped when we understand the context in which Ezekiel is speaking. Israel has been crushed. The kingdom of Judah has been conquered by the Babylonians. They've come in and wrecked the place. And the king of the Jewish nation has been taken off into exile in Babylon. If you like, this great cedar, which was the kingdom of God, has just been chopped down. This line of descendants, this kingly line of David, has been cut off. The kind of devastation that's being described here, I think, is hard for us to imagine. But it's into this context that the prophet Ezekiel says, "But from the top of the cedar, from the highest branch, I'll take a shoot, and I'll plant it myself on a very high mountain. I'll plant it on the high mountain of Israel, and it will sprout branches and bear fruit and become a noble cedar." From the ruins that the Babylonians have caused, we now hear this proclamation of this new kingdom that God is going to plant. And this picture that is painted of a cedar is something that is touched upon throughout the scriptures. A cedar is often presented as the picture of an empire. A cedar is tall. It's majestic. It has wide branches, and it brings together, it covers all those that are underneath it. Famously, we heard about the cedars of Lebanon in the Psalm. And in fact, there's a forest in Lebanon which right now is listed on the World UNESCO Heritage List. It's magnificent. It's extraordinary. And in fact, the Temple of Solomon was built out of cedar wood. Go now to the Gospel. Jesus asks this question. He says, well, what can we say the kingdom of God is like? What parable can we find for it? Now, if you were one of the people listening to Jesus proclaim these words, you might have put your hand up and said, ooh, pick me. I know the answer to this one. The kingdom of God is going to be like a cedar. Tall, powerful, majestic. It will grow higher than all the other kingdoms of the world, and it will spread out its branches and will gather together all of those who are disparate. And then Jesus says, nope. Kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. And it becomes the biggest shrub. Bush? This sounds awfully scrubby, scraggy. What happened to the noble cedar? Where's the majesty? Where's the power? Now somehow Jesus is pointing to something that goes well beyond our expectations. We had thought that this would be what would come about, but instead Jesus is saying, no. Something different is happening. Something that goes beyond our expectations. I wonder if that happens to us in our own lives. That if we were to plot the path from here until our final day on earth, that it would look a lot like a cedar, wouldn't it? Growing from strength to strength, majestic, noble. But how often do we find our expectations are kind of dashed? Lord, I would have thought that by now I'd have been at the top of my field. I would have thought by now my marriage would have been perfect. Surely by now, Lord, my life would have been a success. My family would have been at peace. Surely by now I would have been healthy, Lord. Surely by now the signs of a cedar would have been poking out. What Jesus is showing us in these two parables is that God is doing something unexpected. And that God is doing something that we often don't know about. Remember this first parable. The landowner, he throws the seed into the land, but precisely how everything grows, precisely how we go from seed to harvest, he doesn't know. He just kind of has to hang on for the ride, cultivate where he can, and then finally reap once it's ready. Slowly, patiently, God is bringing about something unexpected. At the end of the Gospel, there's an interesting little addendum that Mark adds. He says this, he says, using many parables like these, he spoke the word to them as far as they were capable of understanding it. He would not speak to them except in parables, but he explained everything to his disciples when they were alone. Here, I think, we receive something important about what it means to be a disciple. That so often we don't comprehend. So often what the Lord proclaims to us reveals something to us, but at the same time leaves something unexplained that we haven't understood. And what the disciple does then is one-on-one talk to the Lord about it. Lord, now that we're alone, what's the deal with this mustard seed? Why do you work so slowly, day and night? And why is it that a mustard bush is coming about when I hoped for a cedar? It seems to me that what a disciple is able to do is able to discern the work of God that happens by day and by night, that happens quietly, that slow growth that seems almost imperceptible. And that the disciple is able to see in the mustard seed and in the bush that grows from it, not something that's gone wrong or an expectation or a hope that is dashed. A disciple won't be disappointed by the mustard seed, but instead will be able to trust that God is working that he's bringing about his kingdom in our lives, and that he knows what he's doing.